Welcome to this episode of the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I feature Olympians, CEOs, disruptors, authors, professional athletes, and the best of the best, where they share their stories of resilience with my lens on leadership and culture. Let's get started. Greetings and welcome to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I'm very excited to bring our guest to you today. Travis Thomas is a performance coach who specializes in mindset, leadership, and culture. He is the former performance coach for the U.S. men's national soccer team and is currently serving that role with Football Club Dallas and the St. Louis University men's soccer team. He continues to serve as a corporate trainer, speaker, and consultant for some of the top companies in the world, and is the director of performance for Limitless Minds. He is the author of the book, 3 Words for Getting Unstuck, Live, Yes, End, in which he shares his experience from 25 years in improvisation and improvisational comedy, something I love so much, and how those principles apply to the happiness and performance in our lives. He currently lives in St. Louis with his wife and 3 kids. Welcome to the show, Travis.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm happy to be here, and it's proof that you can make anyone sound good with, with a long introduction. So,
well, you've done some really great stuff, and I'm so excited to share some of that on the show today. So, the first question I ask every guest is, can you share some of your story?
yeah, absolutely. I'll try to do the condensed version. I don't want to bore. Okay. I don't want to bore
No
everyone.
one will be bored by your story, I promise.
No, but yeah, no, I would say, the fact that, I love how you have heart, like that this podcast is all about heart. And when I think about my story, I think the consistent string or thread with my story for my wife and I and the decisions that we've made, especially, family wise, but career wise, have really we've tried to ground them in heart or ground them in purpose. There's a direct connection between heart and purpose. And I was someone who really never had a clear idea of what they wanted to do, right? The difference between the what and the why.
You're not alone.
But I knew sort of the kinds of things that I wanted to do. I wanted to work with people. I've definitely got a lot of cheese ball in me. So I love being in front of people. I love performing. That led me into improvisation and improvisational comedy. When I got out of college, my wife and I got married young. Sports were my life growing up. And, we're a young married couple. We were living in Boston. Yes, go Boston, go Northeast. And we just had sort of, kind of like your first jobs out of school. And we were really happy and loving the city and loving life. And we found the Improv Asylum in the north end of Boston. We saw a show. I was blown away, Lindsay. And I was like, how do they do that? Those are like magicians up there. How do you create something out of nothing? And how do you do it, collaboratively, collectively as a group? And I was dumb enough to see if they offered classes, and they did. And so I took a level 1 class. Level 1 turned into 6 levels of classes, turned into auditioning for their touring company and making their touring company, and then eventually making my way up to being on that cast of people that I was blown away by, probably 2.5 years previous. And so it was just fun, right? It opened up so many different insights when it came to life off the stage based on the principles that created life on the stage. But I didn't know at that time that it was going to turn into a bigger career down the road, because again, I didn't have a plan. I was just following my heart. I was following my purpose. And a lot of times when people say, oh, hey, just follow your heart and things will work out. Well, what they don't say after that, Lindsay, which you and I know, is like, follow your heart means you have to do some stuff. You got to try some things. You got to be curious. You got to take a risk. There's a lot of doing behind that following your heart. And so I just got busy doing and trying a lot of stuff. And so we ended up in Florida. I started an improv group with 2 other gentlemen. I'm working for a website, enjoying that. My wife and I have now, right, we've had 2 kids, a third is on the way, and my job with the website comes to an end. And now I don't have any income, but I have a family of 5, so that's fun. And what do I do? So if I go back to the heart again, well, what do I want to do? I really want to help people, right? I want to, maybe it's coaching or speaking, I don't know. So I did a deep dive into personal development, to get into transformational coaching, executive coaching, life coaching, different things. But no one's going to hire a coach who doesn't know how to coach. And so after a couple of years of working on myself and going through programs and getting certified, Well, now we're in debt, and now I don't know what that career path looks like. And so, which started kind of like just, a series of having to leave our home and come up to St. Louis and just take any job that I could find, living in a boys' dorm at a boarding school, and
Mm.
but following work that felt meaningful and purposeful and from the heart, and following, and which eventually led to me being at IMG Academy, Sports Academy down in Florida, which is one of the top sports academies in the world, and working there as a leadership coach, getting to work with athletes from all over the world, all sports. And then again, leaping in the net will appear, the old African proverb, leaving
Mm.
that work in 2015 to just kind of to go off on my own and focus on coaching, consulting, and speaking under my own company, which is Live Yes And. Yes and being the basis of improvisation.
Yes.
And so the improv really, which is that thing that just kind of felt like the unrelated aspect of my life, became the most unique part of my career, because I always use those principles of improvisation into mindset, into leadership, into culture and team dynamics.
Mm.
And it kind of came my special ingredient, my special sauce,
Yes.
that then got me into rooms that I probably would have never gotten into, and opportunities I would have never gotten into. I wrote my book, 3 Words for Getting Unstuck, Live Yes And. At this point, I'm doing a lot of work with Limitless Minds, like I still am. And I sent my book to the head coach of the U.S. men's national soccer team, Greg Berhalter, who somehow he got the book, somehow he read the book, and somehow, miraculously, he liked the book, Lindsay, and then called me and asked me if I wanted to come work for the national team. So I
That's
was a soccer
amazing.
I was a soccer
Ah,
I was a soccer player growing up, and so now here I
yeah.
am.
I
Uh,
mean, I love so much about this story, so we're going to take it in chunks. So I want to talk a little bit about why is it so important for leaders, C-suite leaders and all leaders, to really understand improv? And I say this because I'm coaching someone right now, and she's a CFO turned CEO, and her voice has to change.
yeah.
You can't have a consistent voice from CFO to CEO. It's a different kind of leadership style. And I encourage her to role play with me, and she does not want to do it. And she would much rather prepare something and have me critique it than do that. So can you just share a little bit of why this is such a successful approach to leadership?
Yeah. And by the way, I think everyone hates role playing.
Yeah.
People are like, no, I don't want to role play. Let's just talk about it. Let's just,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
let's
Yep.
just
Well, they
talk
feel
about it.
under the microscope. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the reason this is so relevant to everybody, Lindsay, is that life is an improv,
Yeah.
right? Leadership is improvisational more than it is anything.
Yeah.
And so, Limitless Minds, we love to say preparation is the separation, right? So it's not a lack of preparation. It's our ability, it's so much of our success to be able to respond to the uncertainty and volatility of being a leader, is what you're constantly doing.
Yeah.
Your ability to respond to that effectively, often it comes down to the amount of time and preparation you're putting into being able to respond so effectively improvisationally. And so, the misconception with improv is, oh, you just get up on stage and you just you just make it up on the spot. It's like, well, so what is the skill set that allows improvisers to have that freedom and effectiveness and creativity to respond in the moment? Well, they've spent all their time and continue to spend their time exercising those muscles that build resilience, flexibility, adaptability, and
Right.
creativity to respond to what in the moment. What is it that people struggle with responding to in the moment, Lindsay? It's the things in the moment that they weren't expecting,
Yeah.
because they
Well, and
weren't
the only consistent thing in life is change. So, and
yes.
leaders are forced to deal with change at the fastest pace we've ever had. So, being able to respond without turning around with your hair on fire is a critical leadership. I call it a power skill. Some people call them
Yeah.
soft skills. I don't, I retired soft skills. We call them hard
Right. I
skills.
love that. The
Yes,
power
use that.
skills
We're
for
going to
sure.
normalize that. But I think it's so critical for you to have that moment to take a breath, have some clarity, and then purposefully decide how you're going to respond. And I think people that do entertain improv tend to do it better than others. Is that been your observation too?
Absolutely. With Limitless Minds, we call it neutral thinking, right? Neutral thinking is the ability to get to that space or that pause
Yeah.
of clarity where we can choose with clarity our response, our next right step. Well, all of improvisation is based on that yes and mindset, that yes and ability to respond to every moment. Why? Because this is your new reality.
Mm.
So what leaders have to be able, well, all of us, but what leaders have to be able to do is not argue with reality, right? We are at our best when we're not arguing with reality, when we are in collaboration with reality. And what is reality? Reality is, like you said, all of life is constant change. So however things have changed to create our current reality, whether you like it or not, doesn't matter. Your feelings are valid, but
Mm.
whether you like it or not, it doesn't matter. It all comes down to how are you going to now collaborate with it in order to be effective. So leaders have to have that ability because you have to model, you're modeling the composure,
Yes.
the resilience, the peace, the clarity. You're more than anything, you are a symbol
Yeah.
of it's okay. I'm okay. It's okay. We're going to be okay. It doesn't mean, Lindsay, that you have to have all the
That's
answers.
right.
It just means that, hey, which I love, we can figure this out together. We
Well,
can,
uh,
yeah. Lindsay, I don't,
you're speaking my language. I mean, this is the name of my book, Top Down Culture. It's
yes.
because leaders model the behavior of they model the culture they want people to behave like. And if they run around with their hair on fire and embarrass people and belittle people, it's exactly what their people are going to do to each other. And if they don't do that and they lead with heart and positivity and purpose and intention, that's what their people will do. And it's remarkable to me when people are surprised that their culture is in the crapper, and they've been behaving like a jerk. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
not hard. It's
It's
human.
that the power, yeah, the power of relying on one another. I was just listening to Chip Connolly being interviewed on the Rich Roll podcast. One of the best interviews I've heard in a long time. And Chip Connolly says, is it a coincidence that wellness starts with we and illness starts with I? And I was like,
Wow.
there
Mic
we go.
drop.
Boom, right
Woo!
there. Drop
Oh, I
that.
love that. I got to save that. That's really, really cool. Okay, so talk to me about, first of all, you had to be beyond delighted when you get the call from the US men's soccer team saying, yeah, loved your book and want to hire you. Talk me through that and tell me what that was like.
It was just 3 years of pinch me moments,
Yeah.
right? So as a kid who, soccer was my passion growing up. I never even dreamed of being on the national team because I knew I was never good enough. So it
Right.
wasn't like what one day I'll be in the national team. Like, so yeah, the longer version of this story, which is, I was working at IMG Academy and I almost had the opportunity to do a presentation to do a session for the men's national team back in January of 2015. And at the last minute, it didn't work out.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, I was so bummed. And
Yeah.
it was that morning that I decided, it's time for me to write my book, right? So I wrote the introduction for that book the morning of that disappointment. And then I ended up leaving IMG 4 months later to kind of do my own thing, to bet on myself, right?
Yeah.
Bet on myself and go on my own path. And I finished the book in 2016, started doing more and more speaking, really, really slow grind, slow churn. And I would do a talk, sell my book, send my book out to people.
Sure.
Just, you barely you ever hear anything back, Lindsay, when you send
Yeah.
out that book cold. You know this.
Yep.
The cold send never works. But you do it anyway. And I'd sent my book out to Greg Berhalter, the national team coach, not even to him, just to like US Soccer headquarters,
Yeah.
right? So with a little note in it,
Yeah.
because I had worked with some of the players back at IMG Academy. So they knew me. We weren't friends, but they knew
Mhm.
me. And
Attention, visionary leaders. Are you ready to elevate your leadership style and create an exceptional workplace that stands out from the crowd? I'm here to introduce you to a game-changing resource that will transform the way you lead and shape your company culture. It's time to embrace the power of top-down culture. This practical guide empowers your leadership for lasting success, helping you create a workplace where everyone thrives. Get top-down culture today, and let's reshape the future of leadership together.
so he gets the book and obviously, like, so he calls me and I'm like, I can't believe he wants to talk to me, right? And so we get on the phone and he's like, oh, hey, I read your book. And I'm like, I can't believe you read it, right? And I'm just like, holy cow, this is like, hey, why? I'm talking to the national team coach. This is amazing. And we start talking and he's like, hey, I'm going to be in Florida next week for Christmas up in Orlando. Hey, can we meet? I'd love to talk and see if we can work something out. It's like, yeah, absolutely. So I drove up to Kissimmee, Florida. We met in a Starbucks in Kissimmee, Lindsay, and we sat in the back and he kind of mapped out his vision for the team. And he's like, hey, do you think you can help with this? It's like, yeah, I can, of course
Yeah.
I can help with it. And what I love about this, Lindsay, is it was almost exactly 4 years to the day where the opportunity to speak to the national team fell through. And it was that morning I decided to start writing my book. And it was my book that I wrote based on the disappointment
Yeah.
that 4 years later doesn't just get me one session with the national team, but turned into getting me 3 years with the national team as a coach on the coaching staff. To quote Alexander Hamilton, to be in the room where it happens,
Right.
and to get to go to a World Cup and just
Yeah.
like kind of live out all of those childhood dreams. And so it's crazy. I'm blessed and grateful, and what makes it all the more fulfilling, Lindsay, is just really how difficult the path has been. And
Mhm.
so it's sort of appreciating that struggle as well, because
Wow.
the struggle has made it all the more valuable.
Well, there's no one that appreciates that more than I do. I am proof of the struggle, and that's also what gave me my power. And that's
Yeah.
why I have guests like you on the show, because I think showing people that when you lead with your heart and you have purpose driven work, it serves you, and you'll find yourself in the right room with the right people doing the right things, and opportunity does find you. But you have to take risks. You have to bet on yourself and put yourself out there. And that is not for the faint of heart. And there's
No.
plenty of times where I've said, oh God, it'd be so much easier if I just got a paycheck. And every time I say that, some friend of mine somewhere is like, don't you dare. And so it's
Yeah.
it's a, it's hard, but it's worth it. And
Yeah.
when
Well,
it's when it's good, it's great.
yeah, well, that leads me to, so I wrote my book, my only book in 2016, and so for a few years now it's been like, okay, there's another book in me, but what is it? So
Mhm.
just kind of letting it time to marinate and to nurture and ferment, and so I think it's finally here. So
Mhm.
as of the beginning of January, I've just been spending time every day, writing a little bit on it. So I'm 3 chapters in now, and it's going to be on courage,
I
right?
love it.
And what I love about courage is it's French, cour is
Courage.
French for heart. Yeah.
Yes.
And as someone who I don't consider myself courageous in a very stereotypical way.
Mm-mm.
But so just trying to change the narrative and reframe what we really mean and what we really are talking about when we refer to courage.
Well, I think that's funny you say that you don't consider courage. It's not I mean, I think big animal pictures, people view base jumping and skydiving as like brave things to do. But in my world and in my life, where business is where I am, the people that take these risks are very brave and very courageous. And you are all that. So you bet on yourself
Thanks.
when you had a lot to lose, and it's paying off. So talk a little bit about your role at Limitless Minds. What do you do? Who do you work with? And what do they do?
Yeah, so Limitless Minds is an organization that I'm really, really just kind of honored to work with. It was founded by Russell Wilson, the NFL quarterback, his brother Harrison Wilson, DJ Eidson, and then Trevor Moawad. Trevor Moawad was my connection to the company because Trevor was a friend of mine. He was one of the best mindset coaches in the world, and so
Mm,
he was Russell, not only Russell's best friend, but his mindset coach as well. And so they kind of like, why don't we take the best of mindset coaching for athletes and bring it into the corporate world,
yep.
for corporate athletes, if you will, right? Because we're all sort of, and because the principles are the same, it's
Mm,
just the playing field is different. And so how can we share those and translate those, because they're obviously relevant and applicable. So that was sort of the genesis of Limitless Minds. Trevor went on to write 2 books, It Takes What It Takes, and then Getting to Neutral. He passed away just over 2 years ago from cancer, right as kind of all of this was coming about. His books were out, the company, we were in its early stages, but just kind of catching our stride. And so as devastating as that was and is, we're carrying the torch. And we're carrying the torch and honoring Trevor and honoring Trevor's work and expanding, the reach and the scope of what we do. So we work with organizations through, curriculum. We're constantly creating curriculum that is very sort of corporate specific. Now it's being, leadership specific for groups and sales specific for groups and DEI and all going back to, how do we deal with our own mindset, and then how do we help create cultures and teams that reflect that as well. And so it's app-based with a lot of curriculum, so it's very individual and specific one-on-one, but then there's access to all of the diverse coaches, myself included, and then we do a lot of in-person events and virtual training sessions and things like that. And so so I've always been one of the speakers and coaches, and have recently come aboard to help with content and to help as a head coach and a content creator. And so we're really doing some exciting things. And for me, it always goes back to purpose, goes back to heart, right? Lindsay, my purpose, which I articulated probably, we're coming up 19 years, coming on 20 years soon, is to inspire myself and others to live their authentic brilliance.
Yeah, you're doing that.
So however it shows up, that's always the basis of the work that I want to do, is to tap into that, allow people to see their own internal authentic brilliance so that they can bet on themselves and make life choices that reflect their authenticity as well.
Yeah.
So Limitless Minds gives me a great opportunity and platform to do that.
Well, I'm a big fan. You're my 5th Limitless Mind person to be on the show. So I love what you guys do. I love the ways that I've been able to collaborate with you, and hope we can do more together.
Yeah.
So what inspires you?
So it's so sad, not sad, but I have to go back to this Chip Connolly podcast I was listening to. And so awe, right, Lindsay? We think about awe, being in awe. When's the last time, we put you on the spot, Lindsay, when's the last time you were in awe?
Oh my God, this is not the answer you're looking for, but I get to talk to some pretty amazing people almost every day. I'm in awe constantly because of the things they've done with their life and the way they've made their choices and the things that they've risked. I'm always in awe, I'm in a fortunate spot that I get to surround myself with these kinds of people. But
well, that makes sense. And
yes.
So based on the research, I can't think of the scientist, the researcher that did this whole research on what is it that allows people to experience awe. And the top 3 things that create awe experiences, number 3 is nature. Right? A lot of people are like, oh, but
Sure.
I've never, I'm moved by nature, but I've never been moved by nature. But I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Number 3. Well, number 2 and number 1 are the ones that really hit it home with me. Number 2 is, I think he called it effervescent connection.
Yes.
Right. And I'm like, you're describing effervescent connection.
Absolutely.
Lindsay. Connecting with people, being a part of a group, a team, that connection where you feel, you feel that deep connection. I was like, yes, I get moved by that. That's why I love being a part of teams, right? You create those deep connections. And then number 1, which I loved, number 1 is moral beauty. When you witness moral beauty, awe. So I get emotional when I see people, the random act of kindness, when you see people who are overcoming their own obstacle, or that's when I get emotional. People who are on purpose. It's that moral beauty. And so So that's what
love how you broke that down. That was bravo. Brilliant.
That's what inspires me.
Oh my gosh. And what would you like your legacy to be?
Yeah, legacy. I love it. You know what? I really, I just want my legacy to be that he was a good person that tried to do good things.
Well, you're already there. So congrats on that. What is next for Travis?
Yeah, so my word for the year is trust. I give myself a word every year.
Yep.
This year it's trust. I don't know why it was trust at the beginning of the year, but some things have happened already at the beginning of the year. I'm like, I'm glad I picked trust. And so I'm leaning into trust. I'm really fired up to finish. I started the book, so to finish the book
Yes.
this year, to continue to help take Limitless Minds, and expand that reach so that we can help people and help organizations, and just continue to do work that just sort of expands my purpose. And
Mhm.
so yeah, again, I'm not really connected so much to the what that it is, as long as it stays true to my why.
I love it. And how do people find you?
Oh, I'm everywhere. My company is called Live Yes And.
Mhm.
So like social media, my website is liveyesand.com. Don't judge me on my website. It's 8 years overdue, right? You'll see where my priorities are. But then I'm all over, like, so LinkedIn is obviously, I'm Travis Thomas, or you can find me on social medias at
We'll
live
put up your socials
at
for folks.
at Live Yes And. Yeah, I'm
Perfect.
easy. I'm accessible. Reach out. I'll say hi.
Perfect. I love it. Well, this has been a total joy. Any parting words of wisdom for any leaders out there that need to embrace their improv skills or living yes and?
Yeah. I heard, I can't remember who said it, but um, the most powerful three words that any leader can utter is "I don't know."
Mm,
And so, in true improvisational fashion, Lindsay, the next part of that statement after "I don't know" would be, uh, "and we're going to figure it out together."
mhm.
Right? And that's what improv is. Right?
Yeah.
We don't know where this is going, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out together. So I don't need to be the sage on the stage. I don't need to be the expert in the room. I
Yeah.
don't need to prove that I'm smarter than everyone else. My job as a leader is to tap into that collective
I love that.
genius of the group.
Yeah.
So
I
I don't
couldn't
know
agree
is a good
more.
starting point.
Brilliant advice. I couldn't agree more. I always say, as a new leader, you think you're supposed to know everything, but there's zero chance you could. And if you just come to the table knowing that you have a lot to learn, you're going to be in a much better mindset than coming in and saying there's a new sheriff in town, because you'll probably alienate everyone and make them very scared. So
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
good advice. So thank you so much for being a fabulous guest.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple. Thanks for listening, and take good care of each other. Thanks for listening to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel or consider leaving a 5-star review and a great rating at Spotify or Apple. Thank you so much for your support. Have a great day.